people that I never seen unkind to me. Is it any wonder?
Before Alan Parsons was a household name, he was an engineer. He had sat at the console for the Beatles' Abbey Road. He had engineered Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. Then in 1976, he built his own world, a concept album drawn from Edgar Allan Poe, released May 1st in the United States. Tales of mystery and imagination is gothic, cinematic, and deeply unsettling. A symphony of dread built from Poe's most famous works, The Raven, The Telltale Heart, The Fall of the House of Usher.
And still the raven remains in my room.
It was the first rock album to feature a digital vocoder. Orson Welles provided narration. Hypnosis designed the cover. Fun fact, the orchestral sessions took place at Kingsway Hall in London, directly above an underground line. Every passing train shook the recordings. Parsons and Wolfson kept some of those rumbles in. The ghost in the machine was a district line train.
But nothing I try to do can work the same way. Candy's eyes, drag myself across the wrong blind side.
Blue Oyster Cult had been building toward this for years. Dense, layered, cerebral hard rock with occult imagery and literary ambition. Then May 3rd, 1976, arrived and everything changed. Don't Fear the Reaper. 4 minutes of hypnotic perfection built around one of the most iconic guitar figures ever recorded. It reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a defining anthem. The cowbell joke came decades later. The song never needed it. Fun fact, Buck Dharma wrote it after a near-death experience forced him to confront mortality. He didn't write it as tragedy, but as acceptance, even beauty. He later said he was surprised people found it dark. He meant it as a love song. Agents of Fortune didn't just break Blue Oyster Cult commercially. It proved intelligent, eerie, literate rock could still reach a mass audience if the song was undeniable. Here's something that surprises us every time we check our analytics. More than 90% of the people watching this video right now are not subscribed. 90%! Don't Fear the Reaper has been used in hundreds of films and shows, and still only a fraction of listeners know the album it came from. That is exactly the kind of story that deserves a wider audience. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell. Share this with one person who cares about music history. Now let's continue.
And I feel your disease. There's nothing in my dreams.
This is not just an album. This is a crime scene. Metallic KO captures the final shows of Iggy and the Stooges. Raw, hostile, barely controlled chaos, recorded live in Detroit. Released in France on May 7th, 1976, it documents a band already collapsing in real time. The audience throws bottles. Iggy taunts them, insults them, dares them to aim better. You can hear the glass hitting the stage. You can feel the tension tightening with every second. Fun fact, the recording includes actual moments where Iggy is physically hit by objects mid-performance and keeps going. No overdubs, no polish. Just confrontation. The band would not survive this. Within months, it was over. Metallic KO is not pleasant. It is not safe. It is not even really music in the traditional sense. It is the sound of a band burning down in public, refusing to step away from the fire. There's a debate among Aerosmith fans. Toys in the Attic or Rocks? Both came from the same explosive period when Steven Tyler and Joe Perry made everything else sound tame. Scott Carlson said it best. Rocks is so sleazy, it feels greasy when you pull it from the sleeve. Back in the Saddle opens like a warning. Then Rats in the Cellar, Nobody's Fault. Sick as a Dog. 10 tracks that hit hard and never let up. Kurt Cobain loved it. Slash learned from it. Guns N' Roses tried to recreate it. Fun fact, the album was recorded at the height of the band's drug use. That such a tight, focused record came out of that chaos is either astonishing discipline, Oudersbruck or something else entirely. Rocks didn't just define Aerosmith, it became a blueprint for hard rock that would echo for decades. Steve Miller had been making records for a decade. He had a reputation. He had credibility. What he did not have was a mainstream breakthrough until May the 14th, 1976, when Fly Like an Eagle landed and suddenly everyone knew his name. It was the right album at exactly the right moment. Warm, spacey, melodic, built for FM radio, and anchored by 3 singles that became permanent residents of the classic rock canon.
Living in the street, what about the babies, yeah? They don't have enough to eat.
Fly Like an Eagle, Take the Money and Run, Rockin' Me. 3 different moods, 3 different tempos, all unmistakably Steve Miller. The title track opens with a synthesizer pulse that sounds like it came from another planet, then settles into a groove so comfortable it feels like it has always existed. Fun fact, the sessions stretched across a full year. Miller obsessed over the sound, especially the synthesizers. Ritchie Blackmore had just walked away from one of the biggest bands in rock and roll. Deep Purple were fracturing, and rather than stay and fight, Blackmore left. What he built in their wake was more ferocious than anything before. Rainbow Rising, released May the 17th, 1976, is where Blackmore and Ronnie James Dio found each other at full power, and the result was recorded for the ages. Side 1 is already strong. Then Side 2 arrives. Stargazer is 8 minutes of mythological heavy metal. Cozy Powell's drums recorded with an orchestra. At Musicland Studios in Munich, Dio's vocal at its most commanding. Blackmore's solo, cutting through everything.
Whips and chains, just to see him fly. Too many die.
Fun fact, the orchestra on Stargazer had never recorded rock music before. They were a classical ensemble brought into Musicland, and the culture shock was real. Blackmore had to convince them playing at rock volume would not damage their instruments. Time equals 1.5 seconds slash Jordan greater than.
Left you in the red. Your low rent friends are dead. This life can be very strange.
By 1976, Walter Becker and Donald Fagen had already stripped away live performance, touring, and most of the idea of a traditional band. Steely Dan was now a studio project, a philosophy built around obsessive perfectionism and the best session musicians money could assemble.
Clean this mess up, else we'll all end up in jail. The test tubes and the scale.
The Royal Scam, released on the last day of May, was their darkest and most guitar-driven statement yet. Kid Charlemagne opens the album and contains one of the great guitar solos in rock history, delivered by Larry Carlton in a single take. The rest of the record deals in drug dealers, illegal immigrants, failed dreams, and the underside of the American promise. Rolling Stone called it a vivid snapshot of a time when you could trust no one. Fun fact, the Eagles' lyric about Steely knives was a direct nod to Steely Dan. The bands shared the same manager.
See the glory.
A note on the 3 albums that close this list. No Heavy Petting, The Runaways, and Too Old to Rock share May 1976 as their release window, but each comes with a small asterisk. UFO's 5th album has no confirmed exact date beyond the month. The Runaways debut has competing sources giving March, May, and June, and Jethro Tull's record appeared earlier in the UK but reached the United States in May. All 3 belong here.
Mexico love.
UFO were a British hard rock band built around the extraordinary guitar playing of a 21-year-old German prodigy named Michael Schenker. No Heavy Petting was the first UFO album as a 5-piece, adding keyboards, and Schenker tears through it with precision and force. Fun fact, the album's title came from signs in British swimming pools: no heavy petting, alongside no bombing and no running. The band found it funny enough to use. Five teenage girls from Los Angeles. The oldest was 19. Manager Kim Fowley signed them after a single rehearsal. No demo tape, no live show, nothing on record. Mercury Records promoted them as the new Stooges. Most of the music industry laughed. The Runaways responded with a debut album that Joan Jett, Lita Ford, Sherry Curry, Sandy West, and Jackie Fox would be remembered for 50 years later, and that most of the people laughing would be forgotten entirely. Cherry Bomb opens the album and remains the defining track. It was written during Curry's audition because the band did not know how to play the song she had prepared. In under 3 minutes, it announced something new. Fun fact, the bass on the album was played by session musician Nigel Harrison, later of Blondie, because Fowley deemed Jackie Fox unprepared. Fox only discovered this years later. The title of this album was born on a turbulent plane ride over America. Ian Anderson, convinced the aircraft was going down, had one thought crystallize: I am too old to rock and roll, but I am too young to die. Jethro Tull's 9th album, released in May 1976 in the United States, built a concept around that idea. The story of Ray Lomas, an aging rocker who finds renewed fame as musical fashions shift back his way. To name a few. With punk just around the corner, the irony was razor sharp. The album was originally conceived as a full stage musical about an aging biker. That never happened, but the comic strip concept survived in the gatefold. Fun fact, during the 1989 American invasion of Panama, the CIA blasted this album outside the building where Manuel Noriega was hiding. 50 years later, that title still feels uncomfortably relevant. May 1976 was not the loudest, but it might have been the most diverse. Gothic prog, teenage rebellion, studio perfection, total chaos. 50 years later, it still holds up. Music doesn't age, it waits.
Low-rent friends are dead. This life can be very strange. See the glory. Cherry Bomb.